Welcome to Intuitive Transformations with your host, Sylvia Henderson, and discover tools, wisdom, and inspiration that will empower you to transform your life. Sylvia is an intuitive life coach and energy healer with a growing practice that is focused on empowering others to be more of who they want to be. For the next hour, join Sylvia and explore and unravel anything in the way of you creating the life that you would love to live on the OMTimes Radio Network.
Well, hello and welcome everyone to the Intuitive Transformations radio show, where you will find tools you can use to change and transform your life right here on the OMTimes radio network, the voice of consciousness at OMTimes.com. This is Sylvia Henderson, your host, and for those of you who are brand new to my show, I'm an intuitive life coach and an energy healer who lives in Kirkland, Washington in the Pacific Northwest. If you would like to learn more about me and the work that I do, please feel free to visit my website at intuitivetransformations.net. That's intuitivetransformations.net, just like the name of the show pretty much. And if you haven't yet heard, my show is moving to a brand new day and time. Starting on Thursday, November 10th, the Intuitive Transformations radio show will air live every Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, which is 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for those of you who are my fellow West Coast neighbors. And if the new live airtime poses any kind of a conflict with the schedule of your life, just know that you can always find all of my previous shows in podcast form right here on OMTimes.com in the radio show archive section. And you can also find me on iHeartRadio, iTunes, SoundCloud, Intuned, Podbean, and YouTube, as well as some other channels as well. And OMTimes, being as awesome as they are, they're always adding this show to as many podcast channels as possible. So the list of where you can find this show just keeps growing, which is really lovely and fantastic. Because the more people we can find to listen to shows like this, the more we are together helping each other raise the consciousness on the planet and awaken as the whole human race to the truth that we are all one human race returning to divine self-love. Now, if you missed my Pendulum Magic 101 class, I want you to know that we really did have a lot of fun. We had a great time, and I will be teaching this class again. So be sure to sign up for my newsletter on my website so that you will be one of the first to get the date for my next class on the OMTimes Experts educational online platform. And I also hope that you will join Belinda Womack and myself for our next Awaken Your Inner Alchemist group healing call. And that's going to happen next Sunday on November 6th. You can learn more about Awaken Your Inner Alchemist by visiting my website, as I mentioned, intuitivetransformations.net. And, you know, while you're there visiting my website, make sure you take a look at my healing audio products too, because I'm really excited about them. I think that they're helping a lot of people, and I'm sure that that they'll be able to help you if you're really feeling led and called to that. So today is Sunday, October 30th, and you know, with Halloween right around the corner and everything else that's going on, I'm just really curious about how you, my beautiful Intuitive Transformations radio show listeners, are doing out there in the world today. You know, we're really living in interesting, turbulent, ever-changing times, which makes it very easy to focus and entertain frightening thoughts. Whether your focus is on what is happening at Standing Rock in Dakota, where sacred Native American land and beautiful Native Indigenous people are protecting waterways in the face of overtly aggressive forces. Or maybe your focus has been on America's upcoming presidential election, or the future of the United States as a whole, if you live in the U.S. or even outside of the country, and how that might affect you and your neck of the woods on the planet. It seems as if the United States is now mostly the divided states of America, and that's a little disconcerting. Or maybe even your focus has been on the obvious climate and earth changes or challenges that the planet's been facing, or the increase in pollution, or the cost of living, and I just could go on and on and on. So there are lots of opportunities for us to really focus on what is wrong in the world, because right now it's playing out front and center for the whole world to see, and it's all over our media sources. So with all of that going on, I have to say I was recently reminded that we really only have two different types of thoughts. And those thoughts are either oppressive, contracting thoughts, or they're expansive, creative thoughts. And if you've listened to my show before, then you know that I totally believe that thoughts are things, and that we are, and I mean you and I, the creators of our own reality, based upon what we believe to be true. And that whatever you believe to be true actually does show up in your life as a reflection or a projection of what you truly do believe. Now, I want to clarify that I am in no way suggesting that you ignore what is calling for change and intervention in the world, but rather that you choose to view the world through the lenses of expansive, creative thought versus oppressive, contractive thoughts. And maybe the most expansive, creative thing that we can do as a human race during some of the challenging times that we're facing here on the planet is to begin to set positive intentions and be prayerful and mindful about focusing on expansive, creative solutions arising that will transcend our current conscious awareness, so that we can really affect and create some positive changes here for humanity around the globe. It really is the next step that is needed to move beyond the negative thinking of what is wrong. When we identify with our problems, then it just locks us into nothing changing. But if we choose with a sense of expectancy to believe that expansive creative solutions and ideas can be birthed out of some of the chaos we're witnessing, life really changes for the better. So today we're going to talk about mindfulness, being mindful with our focus, our intentions, and our thoughts. And we're going to talk about how mindfulness can lead us to the energy and vibration of true happiness. I have a really wonderful guest joining us today who understands the freeing power of choice that each one of us has. His name is Joseph Emet, and Joseph Emet trained with Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh at the Plum Village, the Mindfulness Practice Center that's located in France. From his training, Joseph was made a Dharma teacher in the tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings. Joseph Emet also has a doctorate in music from the Boston University, and he is the author of Buddha's Book of Sleep, Buddha's Book of Stress Reduction, and Buddha's Book of Meditation. He is the founder of the Mindfulness Meditation Centre that is located in Montreal, Canada, and he lives in Pointe-Claire, Canada. Today, Joseph Emet joins us to talk about his newest book, Finding the Blue Sky, a Mindful Approach to Choosing Happiness Here and Now. Joseph Emet, welcome to the show.
Hello, and it's a pleasure to be here. Yes, I loved your introduction.
Thank you so much. And it's really a pleasure to have you here, Joseph, because really mindfulness is something that, I think people have heard it enough now, but they're not really sure what it is necessarily. So, but before we dig into that, Joseph, you received your doctorate degree in music from Boston University. And so how then did your life path change to bring you to the Zen teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh?
Well, in a number of ways, but specifically as I chronicle in this book, it has to do with becoming a happier person. You know, all these things, enlightenment, awakening, and all those are really related to happiness, because imagine meeting a person who says he's a spiritual teacher and he looks desperately unhappy. Well, you know, there's something missing in that picture, something not quite right. I think a person who's enlightened or awakened somehow should be able to find happiness for himself somewhere. So mindfulness definitely helps in that regard, and particularly, for example, the common definition, you know, paying attention intentionally. You mentioned all kinds of challenges in the world today. Well, we have the choice of paying attention to them, to all the negativity around us, or to pay attention to the blue sky, and right now where I am, the beautiful fall colors, the leaves changing color, the beauty of nature, the beauty of children, the beauty of people, of birds, so paying attention intentionally, mindfulness definitely gives us the choice of which way we want to go.
And so I take it that at the time, that's exactly what you were looking for. So we're going into a break, and when we return, we'll continue our discussion with Joseph Emet. And we're talking about his brand new book, Finding the Blue Sky, a mindful approach to choosing happiness here and now. We'll be back in just a few moments. Please stay tuned.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
There is no death, only a change of worlds. Chief, Seattle. Deborah Livingston is an award-winning intuitive psychic medium whose international services include mediumship, spiritual assessment, animal communication, and spiritual mentoring. She is a published author and a trained shaman. Deborah provides evidential messages from spirit and departed loved ones. Learn more at deblivemedium.com. That's DEBLIV medium.com.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness in action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
When I was little, I didn't talk for a long time. I was sensitive to lights and sounds, so I built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. Sometimes I did the same things over and over, until one day I found out I had autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Sylvia Henderson. You're listening to Intuitive Transformations Radio on OMTimes.com. And today I have joining me Joseph Emet, the author of Finding the Blue Sky, a mindful approach to choosing happiness here and now. And before we went to the break, Joseph, you were sharing about changing our focus, mindfulness, maybe noticing things like the fact that there is a beautiful blue sky for us to enjoy and appreciate, as well as the lovely fall colors that we have this time of year. And I'm sure it's beautiful where you are. And here in the Northwest, we have a very distinct change in season as well. So all the leaves are turning these beautiful golden colors. But Joseph, what brought you to study with Thich Nhat Hanh, and how long did you study with him? I mean, he is known as the the happiness monk, so to speak, because he's always smiling, pretty much like the Dalai Lama. They're, always filled with this joy. What was going on? Were you always kind of challenged in this area yourself, finding your own happiness, and that's what pulled you to investigate further and study his teachings?
Well, you're quite right in pointing out the smiling nature of Thich Nhat Hanh. It's very true. I spent about a year with him on and off, like a month at a time, and every time I would sort of forget how amazing, how wonderful his smile was, and I'd discover it anew every time. It's true that many Buddhist traditions are emotionally neutral, but those two masters, Thich Nhat Hanh and the Dalai Lama, go the extra mile from emotional neutrality toward smiling, laughing, happiness, and positivity and all that. Well, I originally encountered him by chance. He was giving a talk and I was walking in the vicinity, and I saw a poster, and I noticed it was right there, and I just went in. But I stayed with him. One of the reasons was the fact that music is a very big part of Plum Village tradition. Like, you wake up to music, singing. There's singing before the morning talk. There's singing before the work period. Singing before walking meditation. There's singing all day long. And being a musician, I felt right at home. So that was one of the things. And the other one was his emphasis on happiness, which is something I needed and I craved, and I credit my sort of my journey toward a happier life with because of this encounter and because of this apprenticeship with him.
So, what is the difference between Zen and Buddhism? And I'm sure it's quite subtle, but what is the most distinct difference? Because I think for most of us who, outside of Buddhism or Zen philosophies, look at them as being the same thing. Is that true, or is there really a distinct difference?
Zen people are a little bit of anti-traditional iconoclast, and Thich Nhat Hanh has that side. In fact, one day we were having a private meeting with a few people with him, and he said, in our tradition there is no pope. No one can excommunicate us. And that's true of Buddhism in general, but it's particularly true of Zen Buddhism because it, from the very beginning, it has this element of crazy wisdom, all these Zen stories, and it's sort of paradoxical teaching, like teaching by sort of putting in front of you the opposite and noticing that the opposite doesn't make sense. They have these koans, these riddles that sort of seem to imply something, but when you investigate them more, you find that what you come up with, the truth, is the exact opposite of what it seemed to me to be. Yeah, it's a very different kind of teaching. The method is different. The aesthetic is different. I mean, there's a look to Zen. There's a certain Zen look. I mean, you Google on Amazon, you'll find, Zen shower curtains, for example.
Well, yeah.
And you don't find Buddhist shower curtains,
Good point.
Yeah, so it's all a package.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you chose Finding the Blue Sky, which I thought was quite an interesting title. But now that you've also elucidated on, noticing the blue sky. So for you, does the blue sky represent happiness, or what is your definition of happiness? Because it seems that mankind throughout its history has been in a constant, chronic, never-ending pursuit of happiness, yet has fallen quite short from achieving it. So what is your definition of happiness?
Well, I'll go with the definition of a psychology professor who is Barbara Fredrickson. She called her book on happiness Positivity. And for her, she explains that it's the same thing. Positivity is the same thing as happiness, except that it's more specific. Happiness has been used in so many different ways that it has sort of become a little vague. So, I think that positivity, going toward positivity with courage, hope, compassion, gratitude, contentment, all those positive emotions put you in a happy frame of mind. Yeah, I'll go with that. Happiness.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a great definition. So, but here is the conundrum. I mean, here is where the paradox of that, I guess, is that those are beautiful, high vibrational energies, but yet for some reason, people have a very difficult time embracing them and choosing those thoughts, those ideas, those concepts, that focus first and foremost. It seems so much easier to choose something that brings you down. Why do you think that that's happening? When you look at what's going on in the United States right now, and we don't get all of the news here in the U.S., and I'm sure things are happening in other parts of the world. I think it's Venezuela where people are starving. And so why is it that we tend to be pulled down away or go in the opposite direction? And you were speaking earlier about how in Zen teaching, in some ways, it's how you're taught. Is this how mankind learns? By first looking at the opposite before it can embrace what it truly wants, which is that happiness?
Mm-hmm. Well, for some people, they have a good reason. I mean, I recently had a client, we were talking about positivity and finding positivity in yourself. This man had been sexually abused at the age of 12, and he said, I have no idea how to find joy in my heart. And I could understand it. There are people with challenging backgrounds, childhoods, and so on. That's one reason. Another reason is what Thich Nhat Hanh says, that because some level of unhappiness feels normal to them. They have always known that, and that feels like natural. And happiness, on the other hand, feels like a put on, so there are many reasons. Yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. I think there's so much to be said about that we definitely do feel more comfortable in our discomfort if it's our normal. So in every chapter of your book, Finding the Blue Sky, you provide a unique short Zen story that offers profound insight, which you then follow with an expanded example of how the emphasis of the story may show up in someone's life, may be reflected in one's life. And then you conclude with each chapter with practical exercises and meditations that allow your reader to integrate the wisdom from every story. And one of the very first things that you focus upon in your book is how to regulate one's mood. So Joseph, as we've already covered, we're living in a time of massive, rapid change here on the planet, and change is very stressful, right, for everyone, especially when it's something that's outside of our control. And you even wrote in your book that impermanence causes us to suffer or makes us suffer. So how is it possible then for folks to begin to lasso in or regulate their mood and emotions so that their response to change that's outside of their control doesn't overwhelm them? What are some of the principles of mindfulness that they can reach for?
Well, in the book, I suggest riding a bicycle as a good metaphor for finding mood balance or regulating your mood. You know, a bicycle rider looks like he's going absolutely straight, no problem. But put a statue on a bike and give it a push, and you'll see what happens. It'll come crashing down. What the bicycle rider does is actually adjust his balance by making slight moves all the way. And the first step, of course, is to notice, for the bicycle rider to notice that she is actually getting out of balance. And she notices it very quickly, the tiniest deviation from balance, and she compensates for it by steering. We've forgotten what a thrill it was when we first, didn't need training wheels anymore and we could ride a two-wheeler bicycle. And this works also, when it comes to mood balance. Notice when you're losing it, when you're getting angry, for example, or when you're getting anxious. The quicker you notice it, and the more willing you are to compensate, to come back to a balanced point, are sort of determine how peaceful, how balanced your mood is.
Wonderful.
I'm very lucky to be living with a partner whose mood is very balanced, and I appreciate it every day.
That's fantastic. So when we return, we'll discuss more of how you can use mindfulness to find your joy and happiness. We will be back right after the break. Stay tuned for more.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Hey, let me ask you something. Would you seat your 3-year-old child on a windowsill? Would you seat them beside a lit fireplace or by the deep end of a pool? One last question. Would you seat your child in a car seat that's not correct for them? Car crashes are a leading killer of children ages 1 to 13. Secure their future. Seat them in the correct car seat. For more information, visit safercar.gov/the right seat. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
We are back. This is Sylvia Henderson with my guest, Joseph Emet. And Joseph, before we went to the break, you were talking about how regulating our emotions, our feelings, even our thoughts, our moods, is more like riding a bicycle than anything. I know that there was something I read in your book early on where you said that it's really not about focusing on being balanced, but more about noticing and observing when you are being pulled out of balance or out of alignment with your joy and happiness. There is a children's song that you wrote in your book that it brought me back to my childhood. And the song was, There's a Hole in My Bucket. And I have to tell you, I loved that song as a little girl. And when I read that, I went immediately back into that childhood time when I would sing it. I didn't remember all the words, but the tune just stays with you, because it was actually one of my favorite childhood songs. So can you share the message behind this song, There's a Hole in My Bucket? Because you used it as an illustration that reveals the difference between knowing what we want versus what we need. And so why is knowing the difference between what we want and what we need so important when it comes to choosing and experiencing happiness versus choosing something that pulls us out of happiness, like anger?
Interesting questions. Well, first of all, about the song, I don't know for sure, but, Leonard Cohen's famous lines, there's a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. I find an affinity between that song and There's a Hole in the Bucket, Little Liza, Little Liza. And that also goes back to the main Buddhist idea that there is some element of unsatisfactoriness in life. I mean, would we ever choose to get old? Would we ever choose to get sick? Would we ever choose to die? Those three are the main unsatisfactory things Buddha mentioned. But, I mean, he was a monk. But for the rest of us, there's relationship problem, there's loss, there is traffic jams, there is getting children out of the house. And yes, there's many more than the three big ones. So the hole in the bucket is a little bit like the unsatisfactory nature of existence, basically. The other question you mentioned about needs and wants, wants are innumerable, infinite, but needs are relatively few. And if you know the song, that you can't always get what you want, but you can get what you need. And a very simple example, I mean, we all need water, but some of us want, a sugary soft drink, some of us want beer, some of us want coffee, whatever, when we're thirsty. And if you can get in touch with the need behind all of those, then you can make a change in your life. Otherwise, you're stuck with the sugary soft drink because you want it. So go toward the need. In the book, I call it being need smart. Touch the need, and then you can be flexible. You can be free. You can change. You're not stuck. You're not. You have more freedom when you do that.
Something else you wrote in your book that really gave me pause and thought, and that was that you said there are accidents and collisions waiting to happen in the depth of our heart if we do not take care to avoid them with mindfulness and kindness. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, well, one of them, of course, is anxiety, which is so common, stress. as we encounter these curveballs that life throws at us, at every turn, it's possible to lose your freedom, to lose your cool, to lose your happiness, and take a turn in the wrong direction. So some level of vigilance, some level of awareness is called for, really, to know when you're going in the wrong direction, and come back. Mm-hmm.
And I think that what I got, which I think really everyone really needs to awaken to, is that the happiness is never outside of us, and it's always an inside job. And so when we can choose to be mindful of those outside influences that might pull us out of connecting with the happiness that's innately within us, right? That makes all the difference in the world.
Yes, your attitude, the way you look at things, whether you see the glass as half full or half empty. I'll tell you, I see the glass full, completely full, not half full. And I don't know who came up with the half empty glass, but I really consider my glass as full. And I think that attitude is probably more important than whatever happens to you, how you take it. Yes.
I think that's everything. It's all perceptions. I do love the story that you share in your book of seeing and not seeing, that you use to introduce your reader to the idea of connecting with compassion. Would you mind sharing that story briefly? And then maybe if there are some Zen practices that could help those who are listening to begin to move beyond some of their judgmental perceptions, so that they can we can enter into relationships with the energy of compassion for ourselves and for others.
Well, what I recommend to all the people who come to study with me and people I encounter is take a little meditation break during the day. And the easiest way to do that is with mindfulness songs. On my website, mindfulnessmeditationcentre.org, and center is spelled the Canadian way with T-R-E at the end, you'll find upwards of 30 practice songs, mindfulness songs, and they're available for free download. Just click on books, and the first two books have a dozen each, and there are other songs throughout the website. The thing about songs is that they become an earworm. The song itself lasts for 3 minutes, but after the song's over, it keeps sort of running in your head, and you can take a meditation break with a song in the bus, in the train, at the coffee shop, or taking a walk during your break. And it's only 3 minutes long, but if you do that twice a day, it will keep you connected to the meditative space, so that you don't completely lose it. Because no matter how good a meditator you are, you meditate, half an hour in the morning, say, by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that's a dim memory. So the thing about meditation is to come back, so that space, that peace, that insightful part of you, you don't lose it. It's always there. Yeah. So that is something I would recommend. Mindfulnessmeditationcentre.org, and you can download the songs to your portable device if you like. and they're for yours to use. They're free.
That's so beautiful and very generous of you. One of the things, and the other thing before I move on to the next question, one of the things that I do appreciate about the concept of the songs, the mindfulness songs, is it gives your consciousness, it actually, I'm sure, on a physiological level, helps to change how you react in life by changing what you focus on, because the mind, unless you give it something to do, I always say, is like a 2-year-old with a crayon and a blank wall. And if you let it run havoc, you'll have havoc all over your house and all over your life. But it gives the mind something to do with these songs. Is that part of the benefit there?
Yes, and it addresses both sides of your brain, the verbal side and the nonverbal side. The words address the verbal side in a song, and the melody addresses the emotional nonverbal side. Just talking is one thing, and that's the verbal side, but the emotional side also needs to be nurtured, and the song is able to do that to both of those. That's one of the other reasons that I'm very fond of them.
Yeah, and it's a lot more calming and less intrusive than saying affirmations, because there's something about when you use music as well that it becomes, the subconscious mind just allows it to play with that instead of resisting what's being said. When it comes in the form of music, it's just such a beautiful vibration. And I know we're going to be headed into a break, so we will continue our conversation about finding the blue sky and how you can step into a mindful approach and choose happiness here and now.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
So I'm a cat, and I just moved in with this new human, and she's got this little toy she's always playing with, all day long. Tap, 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 bloop, bloop. She can't put it down. There it is. Oh, and get this. She even talks to it. Last week she asked it for Chinese, and guess what? Egg rolls showed up. Like magic. Humans have cool toys.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Well, we're back, and I cannot believe we're already in the last segment of the show. I want to remind everyone that Joseph Emet's website is Mindfulness Meditation Centre, and that's CENTRE is the spelling for center.org. And as he had mentioned, you can find a array of mindfulness songs there. In his book, there are exercises and there are links to even more content from his website as well as in the book. Joseph, is there anything going on that you think that the listeners might be interested in, any events that are going on? I know that we have a nice contingency of listeners that live in Canada, probably not too far from where you are. And so maybe they might be able to visit one of your events and participate in one of your workshops.
Well, I have a mindfulness group at the Jewish General Hospital, one of the big hospitals here for cancer patients, and it's free every Tuesday afternoon. I have a stress management class. We have one that's going on now, another one starting in January. I see people individually, and that's one thing that I really focus on and enjoy a lot, because unlike groups where I do most of the talking in a private session, I get to learn a lot about the person, and the exercises that I go through there are focused for their particular needs. And then I give workshops from organizations and groups that ask me, like teachers groups, schools, groups of judges once. So that's how I spend a lot of my time. On the website, there's also two videos you might enjoy, especially if you're interested in stress management. I stress stress management rather than stress reduction because we want to manage our stress. There's nothing wrong with stress. Like, if a child jumps in front of your car while you're driving on a side street, by all means get stressed and step on those brakes. We want stress when it's appropriate, but we want to manage that stress. We don't want the stress to manage us. We want to be able to let go. So one of those videos is actually about letting go. So there's a few ways that the website or my groups can be helpful.
Fantastic. One of the things that you talk about in your book that really kind of caught me off guard was the value in laziness, that we can consciously choose laziness without the guilt that typically comes with that. So how do we choose laziness consciously to experience happiness?
Well, Thich Nhat Hanh talks about that because he knows his customers. He knows that a lot of people who come to him, to Plum Village, to his retreat centers, are go-go types who, have lists of things they have to do, and they complain about having so many things to do and not enough time and all that. So he preaches laziness to them. What he means by laziness is not an inability to do things. On the contrary, it's an ability to take time off sometimes, to balance the periods of intense work with periods of enjoyable leisure. And the way he labels it, laziness, I think is a little tongue-in-cheek way of doing it. Mm-hmm.
But I love that because it really is about creating that balance. I mean, in our society today, I used to work at Microsoft, and I live not too far from Microsoft, and so I see this constant stream of go, 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 and I myself am a recovering type A personality, so it is really important to bring in that, to make it more of a cycle, yin and a yang.
Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, your life turns into a series of chores, You're just doing everything, but not giving yourself the time to enjoy it,
Exactly. So what do you believe is the number one biggest obstacle that opposes our happiness? And what is the most significant change that one can make in order to become happier?
Well, in my case, it was mindfulness, the practice of mindfulness. The practice of mindfulness, there are many aspects to it. One of them is being aware. For example, perhaps you've experienced this. Somebody is losing it, getting mad, and you say to him, "Why are you so angry?" And he says, "I'm not angry." but everybody else in the room can see that he's angry. He's the only one who doesn't see it. So awareness, noticing what's going on inside is so important. And that's part of mindfulness practice. And we're changing habits here. You mentioned transformation right at the beginning of your show in relation with your own work and also the radio station. That's also very much on the mind of Thich Nhat Hanh. His practice is about change, and if we're changing a lifelong habit, we need to practice the thing we're changing. It's like learning how to play the guitar, learning how to speak Spanish. It needs a little bit of diligence. And so one of the things that is very important, and I recommend this to everybody, every one of your listeners, is to be persistent. If you're making a very small amount of 1% change in your life, don't underestimate that. 1% change a day, in 100 days, 3 months, that's 100%. And in comparison, it took Buddha 6 years to attain awakening. So, some people, and I unfortunately meet quite a few of those, want mindfulness to work overnight, want instant results. And these same people may be taking, psychotropic drugs for 10 years without much results, and they're okay with that, and they come to mindfulness and they want very quick results. So one big thing I would like to leave your listeners with is the benefit of persistence and diligence and not giving up and hanging in there. Mm-hmm.
I really like how you point out that everyone really wants this instant fix, when in reality, if everything were to change overnight, I don't think that we would be able to maintain the integrity of our sanity. If our thoughts created instantly, if change happened instantly, we're so driven to want to get out of our pain and discomfort. But if you had the ability to instantly create everything that you thought of and had a miraculous change in the moment happen with every thought, it would be utter hell and chaos. Because even wishing, I want a brand new home with furniture, and having it instantly appear when you return home from work, yet you knew when you left the house you locked the door, and when you came home you had to unlock the door, and then wondering, how did this happen? So
I never thought of that, but this is the downside, isn't it? This is the downside of instant change.
There's a downside to instant change, and I find quite often, even with clients, new clients, when they want to work with me and they say, well, how many sessions will it take? And I say, try one and see where it goes from there. But interestingly enough, everyone wants just to do one thing and have their whole life be better, not realizing that they've had a whole lifetime of doing life a different way, and that it would actually kind of fracture their psyche to have everything. They wouldn't trust it. It would be so weird, out of place, like you were talking about. It would not be an appropriate normal for them.
Yes. So you have encountered that tendency as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I understand. Really what we want in humanity is to not be in pain. And, the one thing I really appreciate and value about mindfulness, Joseph, is that it allows you to not sit with your pain, but allow the painful emotions to actually have the freedom to move and release, versus trying to stuff them in a closet in the back of your consciousness and not deal with it, not feel with it, and feel it, and take a med or a drink or a drug and a distraction away from what's going on within you. I think that locks people into the inability to access their true joy and happiness.
Yes, one of my teachers used to say meditation is becoming more intimate with yourself.
It is.
And I think that's a very good definition or reason for doing meditation.
I completely agree with you. Well, it's hard to believe that we're coming up on just about the end of the show. And Joseph Emet, I so appreciate you taking the time to join us and to share from your wealth of wisdom. I cannot even imagine what it would have been like to study with the remarkable teacher that you had in France, of all places, too. I mean,
yes,
what a
that
journey.
was another bonus.
Yeah, what a journey you've had to experience Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings personally and then in such a beautiful setting. So thank you so very much, Joseph, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And I certainly hope that you will take to heart the profound value of mindfulness and using that as your pathway to joy and happiness. Enjoy the rest of your day. Know that I love you and that you are richly loved and the universe has your back. Take care until we meet again. Until then, you are loved and you are lovable. Goodbye.